Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling, as you've seen what's going on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today, where we'll be relaxing as per usual. I'm recording late because I forgot that I hadn't recorded an Animal Crossing episode. But it's not really much of an excuse. I recorded some Animal Well, which probably is ending somewhat soon, and is going to be something which will probably be stretched out a little bit because I don't really have enough time to do the thumbnail art for it, but for the series afterwards. Well, actually, there is a possibility. We'll have to see. But yeah, I recorded it, and then it wasn't until like a few minutes ago I was like, wait a minute, I haven't recorded Animal Crossing yet. So here I am. Good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 11:56 p.m. on Tuesday, July 8th, 2025. How's life? You know, what's been going on? I would say I'm playing a bit more of Uma Musume, which is probably not a good idea when I was like, oh, you know, I'm already busy doing stuff, you know, I haven't even done my Animal Crossing thumbnail art fights going on, I'm a little bit behind recording, and what do? Oh, you know, I'm going to start playing a new game, which I've not played before. The honest answer is, it's kind of just a fun time, to be honest. I don't think I will play it forever, at least when rampant power creep sort of overtakes the game. I can very much see myself being like, well, you know, I don't want to deal with that anymore. But while in this sort of, it's as I say, it's a beautiful discovery phase of any sort of game, is where you're sort of figuring out how to play, you're sort of like learning the strategy, and things are not always 100% optimized for yourself. I'm sure they are on a long scale of a JP version of the game, but for me right now, it's sort of like, oh, you know, there's a lot of discovery, there's a lot that's going on. Currently what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to sort of finish off the event, see if I can get the card maxed out. I've only got like 1 day left or something. It is possible, but it will certainly be a bit difficile, I would say. But yes, it should be technically possible. The thing I'm having most struggle with right now is that I cannot seem to beat the contest mode with Urahara. Wait, Uraharura? What is that horse's name called? Uraharara? Is that it? Uraharara. Uma Musume. Haru Urara? Oh, that's it. I was like, why does that not sound right? Haru Urara. Which I suppose is sort of like in fitting with the character, to be honest, but is surprisingly difficult. But yeah, the thing which I find interesting about at least Uma Musume, the more I learn about it, is the fact that it's, you know, obviously it's based off real racehorses, and a lot of the actual stories and details are incorporated within the presentation of the characters or the personalities of the characters, etc, etc. And I'm like, that's a pretty cool detail, to be perfectly honest. I don't understand every single thing, but people writing about it is fascinating. I think like Haru Urara is becoming quite popular, apparently. Like I hear she's sort of blowing up on Twitter. Essentially that, as I understand the story of her horse, is she's someone who never gives up, as in the career history of Haru Urara as a horse is something like she did like 100 and something races and never won a race, which is a sheer level of determination, which, who knows, I don't know if I could ever aspire to be honest. That creates some very next level determination to do that. But it's a sort of like inspiring thing where people are sort of cheering her on. And there's a very interesting, but like this is the thing which I find like is the thing which I can see why people will be drawn to Uma Musume, because there's like such nice little details in it. Because basically there's a career mode which is kind of like a campaign a story campaign that you do for each character. But Haru Urara's one is interesting because in most of the other characters' campaigns is you basically, it's going to be hard about describing the entire mechanics of the game, but you basically have to win certain races. Let's say that the gameplay loop is you build up your stats and then you enter the competitions and you win the race. But there's a secondary mechanic which is basically accruing fans, people who support you, and it turns out that Haruura's goals, the first goals are essentially not to race at all. Essentially, she has no racing goals. She only has one like qualification racing goal, and then every single other one for like the next three turns or so is accruing fans. And it's very interesting because she's like the only character where you have a huge long stretch at the beginning of a game where you're not really racing, or you're not expected to race. You're not even expected to win necessarily. You just enter a race to try and see what you can do, and get fans that way. There's no strict requirement to actually win the race or do particularly well on a race like every other single character has. And then eventually you start doing it, and I haven't actually read a story and that sort of thing, but the first time I played through, I looked at the goals, and there's one that struck me as interesting, because the later goals are often much more about like, it's like they become harder and harder. Like you have to like be top 5 in some of these races, and then you have to be top 3, top 2, and then like top 1 is normally how most of them go. But this one was a bit different. Like as I said, it has a different start, and then it goes top 5 and top 3 and top 1. But then the final challenge to do in her like campaign mode is she just has to take part in a race. She doesn't even have to win. And I looked at it and I went, what? And like, that's such an easy requirement. Why is it a final requirement? But then you get to a race and it all becomes clear of what is happening. Because the race you had to partake in is a race which basically her stats are the complete opposite of. Like, she has a proficiency in certain types of races. This is the race that is the final challenge, is a race which she has no proficiency in whatsoever. And I looked at that and I was like, how am I meant to do anything in this race? And you do the race, and as expected, you come in dead last. And you don't even come dead last. It's not even close. You're dead last by a huge, ridiculous amount. Obviously, because you spent the entire campaign training for different types of races, and then it's like suddenly, your final boss is to do a different race. And I'm like, what's going on? But it's essentially a scripted loss in the game. It's basically the game saying you have to lose this round, essentially. And then there's a bit of a story beat where it's very sad, because she's a very happy character, I suppose. Probably like Stepford Smiler sort of level, maybe, I don't know. But then she's just like, after a race, essentially breaks down, being like, I had fun, why am I crying, sort of thing. And that is kind of a moment when I was playing this game and being like, whoa, this game has a lot of depth to it. Not necessarily through the mechanical depth, which it does. It's interesting in that regard. But it is actually an incredible example of storytelling through game mechanics, which I didn't expect from it, to be perfectly honest. Because afterwards I read up about it, and yeah, this is where you learn about the notoriety of this horse in the actual horse racing scene. Is she just never gave up, and never even got a win at the end. And this sort of character, and this anime representation of her is the same. Someone who never gives up, essentially, or tries to never give up. Which is why it's sort of like you're set up to fail. Your final challenge is an impossible race, essentially. There's no way you can win it, and you're not expected to, because it's meant to be a story beat. And I was like, that's fascinating. What an interesting thing. Because it's not something I've seen that often in a game before. Like, a scripted loss which feels natural to a game, because I do have problems with scripted losses, I think, in general sometimes, especially when it's like not evident that it's like, you're actually meant to lose here. But one that I always think about was, there was this Order of the Phoenix DS game or something, where there's a very difficult battle, but it wasn't obvious to me when I was playing it. Maybe because I missed obvious signs, I don't know. Where it was like, you're meant to lose this battle. So I kept like retrying it, and until at one point I was like, in frustration, I was like, whatever, I'll just, sorry Harry Potter. And I lost. And then it like, the game continues, and I went, what? But this one, it felt very natural because, again, it doesn't explicitly say, like, it gives you all the clues to be like, something strange is going on here, and it doesn't send you immediately to a game over screen that you're used to sending you. It basically relaxes the conditions so much that you're like, okay, it feels like I can't fail this, and you can't fail this, technically. You can't fail that challenge, you just have to turn up to a challenge, but you fail it in a narrative sense, and it's like, whoa, that is a really cool way of illustrating this character's story. And apparently there's a lot of small things in the game like that. Like, there's another character I hear who basically, their real life counterpart got injured like partway through their career or something, and that like is reflected in the campaign when you play this character, is that there's a scripted event where this character will basically, I don't know exactly what happens because I haven't played this character's campaign yet, like lose their emotions, that like lose their statuses or something, and makes it very difficult to recover from, and it's like built into the character's campaign. It's like, whoa, that's really interesting. There's another character I played who also had like a kind of scripted loss, where, as I understand, her story is sort of like she wants to like act cool and that sort of thing, and she has built this intense rivalry with someone, but actually she has like a different set of proficiencies, so this rivalry doesn't really make much sense in the end, and then she enters the race against this character in a race which she's not suited for, and she loses, and then she's just like, what am I even doing? That's what I sort of kind of gleaned from the story. I don't actually know if that's true because I didn't look this up, but I'm like, whoa, this is such a cool way to incorporate, and such a cool and neat way to incorporate narrative into, and storytelling into the actual mechanics without it being obtrusive. Because in each of these elements, none of these are a failure state. It does something very interesting where basically it relaxes the passing state so much that it can give you what would usually be a failure. You still pass, but it still feels like a failure narratively. And I'm just like, that's cool. I like that. And I'm sure there's like a million other things. I'm not like that into Japanese horse racing. I'm not into Japanese horse racing, so I don't know the storylines. But hearing, like, it absolutely would be a thing where I'm like, I would watch like a video essay about someone detailing a character and how each of these little details reflect the real life horse athletes career or something. And that's what makes it so fascinating to me. Oh, there's another one called Gold Ship, who, like, my first impression of her in the game was like, what, this character is trolling me, essentially. This character is in her own world, essentially. And apparently it reflects basically what the real life horse was like. The real life horse could have been like incredibly strong, but half the time he just kind of like did his own thing, essentially. And it's reflected in the character. The character is like absolutely insane. A lot of the other characters are like very nice and do kind things and things like that. But this character, when they win, literally drop kicks you in the face for winning. Why? I don't know. It's just strange. They have such a goofy poser. They're basically a memer, this character, at heart. And it's reflected in it, so I don't know. I'm just like, this is a level of detail which I'm like, I don't care about horse racing nearly as much as I'm sure the creators do, but I can appreciate the lengths that they went to be able to integrate an interesting reflection of a story behind not only the mechanical narrative of it, but also like the discovery of it as well. Like, these characters were all built off like reputations that the real life horses or jockeys all had, or maybe names or something. And I was just like, what a fascinating sort of way, like almost like a documentary reflection game. Obviously it's not actually a documentary, but it's kind of like what people do when they create stories and media based off like public IP things like fairy tales or whatever, except for this is like real life stuff which is happening now, isn't it? Presumably. I don't know if there are any active horse races in it, but the thing which sort of warmed my heart is the fact that Haruulala seemed to have won a lot of the Western crowd over, and apparently the actual Haruulala, who's still alive, has like a Twitter account or something, and then the owner was suddenly like, why is there such a big influx of things going on? And then they like sent out some tweets basically just being like, oh yeah, Hello is doing great, thank you for everyone's support. And I was just like, you know what, this is what it's about. If you turn a blind eye to the fact that this is, you know, still a gambling sport in the end and not something I would encourage people to actively partake in the gambling aspect of it. But I'm just like, it's very cute how it's sort of reaching out these different communities in a very, I'm not sure if unintended way, but in a way which is earned. Like, I didn't play Uma Musume because I was just like, what's the point? Like, I don't know anything about this, but now I can see why people love it so much, not necessarily as the game, but as the media property. Now again, I don't know if it's something which I will continue on forever, but I think in this time now, it's fun to sort of learn about, fun to hear the stories, fun to understand exactly how each of these things came to be, you know? And plus, it's got a nice balance with a gameplay loop where it's like you need just enough thought process that you actually need to make decisions, but you don't need a ridiculous amount of like puzzling and strategic and number crunching at the same time. You have like a general workflow of what you want to do, but still at each stage you kind of had to make a runtime decision of if it's worth it or not, which is really nice because, you know, in Shiny Colours, the most recent, well, I don't say Hello, it was actually I guess a bit different, but when Step was released, which is the last time I played a lot more, it's like they actually completely dumbed down the game, essentially, where the optimal strategy was literally to spam one technique over and over and over again, and then do auditions as you need them, essentially. Because the previous mode to that was Grad, which required a lot of thought, where you would have to like sacrifice, you had to make sure that you take abilities at the correct timing. Step kind of just like was more of like a time investment rather than a strategic investment, which is interesting in its own right. So yeah, I don't know. In this moment while I'm having fun with the game, I see no reason to stop playing. And then when I stop having fun, well, that'll be that. So yeah, I don't have much, oh, I dropped my controller, thought process on Uma Musume at the moment in total. It's not been out for long enough, I think, for me to draw a conclusion, but I really, really do appreciate how they've interwoven the storylines into the mechanics of the game you play. That, I think, is a cool shout out. Anyway, on that note, I'm going to round this episode off here, so if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons, I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated, socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell, so until next time, bye bye for now.